What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Oak Tree Football Channel. In today's video, I will be looking at the Cleveland Browns 2020 schedule, and I'll be giving a record prediction. I've been doing this for a lot of college football teams recently, so if you haven't checked those out, go check them out. But I've been doing NFL teams every few days, so today I'll be doing the Cleveland Browns. The Browns were bottom dwellers in the NFL for many years. Had some of the first picks in the draft for many years in a row, including one win in 2 seasons. And then a few years ago in the offseason, they made some big moves, like bringing in wide receiver Jarvis Landry from the Miami Dolphins, and then with the first pick in the draft, getting Baker Mayfield. And then in the season, in Baker Mayfield's first game, he was able to give the Browns their first win in over 500 days, and the Browns won 7 games that season, and the future looked bright for them. And then it looked even brighter after they had one of the best offseason, getting one of the best wide receivers in the NFL in Odell Beckham. So they had so much talent on the roster already, and now adding Odell Beckham into it, Baker Mayfield going into his second season, it looked like the Browns were set to be one of the best teams in the NFL, but they really disappointed everybody, and they really are an example of just because you have a good roster does not mean you'll be a good team in the NFL. You have to be well coached and stuff. Their head coach was actually fired after last season, but the future could look bright for the Browns, but also there are some things that don't look great for the Browns going forward. They had a pretty good draft. They had a really, really good pick in the first round. And they have a new coach, Kevin Stefanski, the former Vikings offensive coordinator. Baker Mayfield's going into his 3rd year. But the Browns I think this is a year when they need to play good, especially some of their players on offense. They need to play good. Otherwise, it's a big question mark for even Baker Mayfield. If Baker Mayfield doesn't have a good year, I think his future with the team is a question mark going forward. So there's a lot that needs to go right for the Browns this season. But with that being said, let's get into the roster. So they went 6-10 last year, which surprised a lot of people. Finished 3rd in the division, finishing only above the Cincinnati Bengals, who are the worst team in the NFL. So let's get into looking at their roster. Week 1, this is one of the toughest games of the season already. They're at the Ravens, at Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens were the best team in last year's regular season, going 14-2, and they should have another good year this season. And unless their starting quarterback Lamar Jackson gets injured, but this is week 1, so he should be healthy going into this game. I'm not saying he will be healthy, but he should be healthy going into this game. And I do think that's going to be such a tough game for the Browns, especially being on the road against a division rival. I don't think they would be able to win that game. It's just a really, really tough game against a very good team, so I don't know if it's going to be off to a good start for the Browns this season. But week 2, they play on Thursday Night Football against the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a very winnable game. They could lose because the Bengals have had a good offseason. They could lose this game, but it's one of their more winnable games of the season. I think that's safe to say. Week 3, they play the Washington Redskins. The Redskins are not a great team in the NFL. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL this season. I could actually see this being one of the few games the Redskins win this year, but also I could see the Browns winning this game. So it might be a bit close, but at the end of the day, I do think the Browns are the better team, and they should be able to get a win here. Week 4, I have a really tough game on the road against the Dallas Cowboys. So the Dallas Cowboys are a very good football team. I'm not sure if this is the year where they're going to be great, but in the future looks really, really bright for them. With a new coach, Mike McCarthy, this is going to be a big challenge for the Browns this season. I really think so. I could see them winning this game, but to me, it looks like Cowboys are the better team. The Browns are on the road. I do think it will be a win for the Cowboys. It might be a bit close, but at the end of the day, the Cowboys are the better team. Week 5 against the Colts. The Colts actually had a pretty good offseason, especially getting a new quarterback, signing Phillip Rivers. The Colts are a big question mark to me this season because I could either see them having a pretty good year or a pretty bad one. I do think the Browns might be able to win this game, especially this game being at home. I do think it's a game that they can win. But that being said, it's also a game they can lose. I feel like I've said that multiple times, but the Browns just have tough games this season. But also they have games where we don't really know if is this going to be a good team or is this going to be a bad team. The Colts are a good example of that. It's similar with the Bengals. Even the Redskins, they could have a good year. But I do think the Browns might be able to win that game. But we will see. Then they have two division away games. First against the Steelers. Steelers are a team I think can be a really, really good team this year. They are in a division with the Ravens, which is going to make them hard to win the division. But I still do think that we could be seeing them in the playoffs next season. This season. Steelers looks like a very good team for them, especially on defense. That's going to be hard for the Browns to beat. Especially on the road. So a lot of their tougher games are actually on the road. The Ravens, the Cowboys, and now the Steelers. So this game, I think, I don't know. I don't really think this is the most winnable game for the Browns this season. Looking at Week 7, they play the Bengals once again. This time they play at the Bengals. Which is going to make it harder. The Bengals definitely improved this offseason. I already talked about them earlier, but they definitely improved this offseason, getting the likes of Joe Burrow. And on the defensive side of the ball, they got Von Bell. A.J. Green should be healthy this season. So the Bengals could be a good team this year. And this actually could be a tough game. But I could see the Browns winning. I definitely could. But I could also see the Bengals winning in this game. Week 8, they play the Raiders. The Raiders, like the Colts, are a team that I'm really questioning this season because I could see them being a good team, but also I could see them being a bad team. I could see them winning like 5 games, but I could also see them winning maybe even 10. The Raiders are a really, really interesting team to me, but I'm not sure if they'll be the best team this year, and then it's a home game for the Browns. I do think they should be able to win this game. It might be close, but I do think they should be able to win. Week 10, they play the Houston Texans. Houston Texans made a lot of interesting moves this offseason. I think that's a good word to use there because I don't know if they were the best moves. I mean, Bill O'Brien, getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins was a bad move. And then as his replacement, getting Brandon Cooks, a guy who's going to cost more money than him and is on a lower level. And then the DeAndre Hopkins trade, getting players that really aren't as good as they once were. So it's really not the best offseason for the Texans. I think they drafted okay, but the offseason and free agency period wasn't great. And I don't know if they can have a good year. I did do a video where I talked about some potential playoff chances for them because I was talking about their quarterback, Deshaun Watson. So if you want to go check that video out, check that out after this. But I do think the Browns can be in the playoff race just because the Texans can be in the playoff race just because of Deshaun Watson. That being said, though, it's going to be really tough for them. And this could be a win for the Browns. I definitely think so, especially at home. Week 11, they play the Philadelphia Eagles. If you didn't know, I am a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I do think the Eagles actually have a very good roster this season. I think it's their best since the Super Bowl. They made some really good offseason moves, notably bringing in Darius Slay, getting a really top-tier cornerback, and then Javon Hargrave to really make their defensive line one of the best in the NFL, pairing him up with Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox. Great defensive line. Secondary definitely needs help, same with the linebackers. But then there's their offense. If their offense can stay healthy, I think their offense can be one of the best in the NFL because I do believe Carson Wentz is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He elevates his team. Even with these unknown receivers, he's still throwing 25-plus touchdowns and under 10 interceptions a season. He's actually a really, really good quarterback, and he can be in the future. The Eagles are pretty well coached with Doug Peterson, and the Eagles look like a really good team. The Browns could win this game. Being at home, having the home field advantage, of course, and they do have some good pieces on the team, but I might just be saying this as I'm an Eagles fan, but I do believe that the Eagles actually have a great roster and can be a good NFL team this season. Week 12, they have a very winnable game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It is at the Jaguars, but the Jaguars have made some very poor moves these past few years, and they really are in a rebuilding phase right now. And I do think they'll have one of the top picks at the 2021 NFL Draft. I expect probably low win totals. I know Gardner Minshew can be a good quarterback, but it's just the pieces around him are not great. They'll probably be trading, they might be trading Yannick Ngakoue and Leonard Fournette in coming weeks. It just doesn't look like the best future for the Jaguars. Well, the future could be good for them, but this season doesn't look great. They're definitely in a rebuilding phase, and they want the draft picks. They want all the draft picks they can get. If they don't have the first pick of the draft, I would not be surprised if they trade up for it, because I think they want Trevor Lawrence. According to other NFL teams, they've tried to trade for 2021 NFL draft picks, and they already have 2 first-round picks. And I wouldn't be surprised if they make it more with trading away players like Yannick Ngakoue and Leonard Fournette. So like I said, this should be a winnable game for the Browns, even on the road. Jaguars just aren't the best team anymore. A few years ago, they were definitely up there as one of the top-tier teams in the NFL. Not anymore, though, and I do think that can be one of their easier wins of the season, even though it is on the road. Week 13 against they play at the Tennessee Titans. This is going to be a really tough game because the Tennessee Titans are a very, very good football team. They had that unbelievable story squeezing into the playoffs and then making it all the way to the AFC Championship game, knocking out the likes of Tom Brady and the number 1 team in the AFC in the Baltimore Ravens. And I do think they will have another very good season. So it's going to be a tough game for the Browns to win, especially on the road. I do think that'll be a loss. They might be able to make it close, but I do think it'll be a loss. Week 14, they play the Ravens again. Because this one's at home and because it's later in the season, I think it's more winnable than their Week 1 game. That being said, though, the Ravens are one of the best teams in the NFL, and it's going to be very tough to win this game. It could be close, but at home for the Browns, I still do think the Ravens are the better team, unless, like I said earlier, unless someone like Lamar Jackson is injured. I do think it will be a win for the Baltimore Ravens in that game. Week 15 and Week 16, they have 2 of their easier games, and it's actually very interesting how they do this, how their schedule works here. Week 15, they play the Giants at MetLife Stadium, and then Week 16, they play the Jets at MetLife Stadium. So no need for them to travel anywhere in that time. So it's very interesting how that schedule is put together, I think. But those are 2 very winnable games. I expect the Jets and the Giants to be 2 of the worst teams in the NFL. Have some high draft picks for next year's NFL draft. They're just not the best football teams, and those are both very winnable games for the Browns. And I think that can really give them it can be good heading in as late in the season. You'd rather have those wins earlier in the season, but maybe it will get them ready for next year. I'm already looking ahead to that, and then to end the season, play the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. Very tough game because Steelers, like I said earlier, are one of the best teams in the AFC. I really do believe so with some of the moves they made this offseason. Even losing Javon Hargrave, they still have a really good offense and defense. And they should be a top team in the AFC this season. And I'm not sure if the Browns will be able to win that game. So once again, as I always do in these videos, now I will go through each game once again, and I'll say who I believe will win. Week 1 against the Ravens, I think this will be a loss. And I don't think it'll be necessarily close. The Ravens just are the better team. And at home should be a pretty big win for the Ravens, I do think. Week 2 against the Bengals at home on Thursday Night Football. I think Joe Burrow can get it done for the Bengals. Honestly, in this game, on prime time, in front of the country, that would be a huge win for him. And I do think it will happen. So I think the Browns will be off to an 0-2 start. But then I do think they'll beat the Redskins to start 1-2. I think they'll then lose to the Cowboys because the Cowboys are a great football team, especially on the road. I think they'll beat the Colts at home. I'm not sure if they'll win that many games on the road, but I do think they will beat the Colts at home. I think they'll lose to the Steelers, especially on the road, because the Steelers are just such a tough team. But then I think they'll get revenge for the Bengals and be able to beat them in Week 7. So they'll split the series with the Bengals. I think they'll be able to beat the Raiders in Week 8. Then they have their bye week. I think they'll lose to both the Texans and the Eagles. Even with Texans making some bad moves, I still believe they're a good football team. And Eagles just got better this offseason, I think. I think that'll be a loss. Week 12 at the Jaguars, I think they can win that before going on a 2-game losing streak against two teams I think will be in the playoffs, in the Tennessee Titans and the Baltimore Ravens. I think they'll be able to beat both the Giants and the Jets. They don't have to travel in that time, and they're just playing two of the worst teams in the NFL. And I do think they'll be able to win those games. And then I think they will lose to the Steelers in the final week of the season to give them a record of 7-9. The Browns could be better than this, but they could also be worse. Originally, I had them at 6-10, but I do think they will improve from last year, so I moved them up to 7-9. I could see them being a contender in the playoffs. I really could, but I could also see them potentially being a top 10 pick in the draft again. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the Browns do this year. Baker Mayfield, I think he needs to step up. Same with Odell Beckham, did not have a great year last season. But they do have some good other players, especially Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is a very, very good running back. I think he's already one of the better ones in the NFL. But that is what I think of the Cleveland Browns. What do you think about the Cleveland Browns? Tell me in the comment section below. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like. And if you're new around here, feel free to subscribe for more daily NFL and college football content. But once again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.